right, so we are live, everyone. So good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining for the first time, and we do have a class joining for the first time today, which is really exciting, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. So right now, we are joined by 6 classes from across North America. I want to give them a chance to do a bit of a shout out before we dive in. So we've got Miss Rosenberger's grade 2 through 4s in Cambridge and Massachusetts. Hi, guys. Hey, what you lack in numbers, you make up for it in enthusiasm. I love it. We've got Miss Bell's grade 4-5s in Tucson, Arizona. Hi, guys.
Say hi.
Hey. Hi, we've got Miss Vanishlee's grade 5s in Milton in Ontario. Hi, guys. Let's see. Oh, the mic did cut out, but you're there. There's so many of you. They just like packed you guys in on the floor. I love it. We've got Miss Holden's grade 3s in Spruce Grove in Alberta, guys. Oh, there's so much pink today. I don't know why there's so much pink, but I love it. You guys are so themed. We've got Miss Deer's grade 7s in Chesapeake in Virginia. Hey, there's like Adirondack chairs right in the school. Man, I wish I could chair like that when I was in school. And then last but not least, Miss Pearson's grade 5s in Calgary in Alberta. Hi, guys. Welcome in. One student super keen. Of course, the reason you guys are all here today is for our speakers. So we are joined live by Teresa at the Turtle Hospital in Marathon, Florida, in the beautiful Florida Keys, where it is 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 25 or so Celsius. And so she is going to walk us around this fantastic facility to highlight some of the amazing work they do. Since 1986, they have been rescuing, rehabilitating, and re-releasing injured sea turtles. We've done over 50 sessions with them. We always love having them back. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Teresa. Thank you so much for joining us, and take it away.
Well, hi, guys. So we're actually going to start with little Flounder. He's one of our newest turtles. Last evening, we got in 12 of these little juvenile green sea turtles that were actually transferred to us from a little bit further north in Florida, up near Volusia, Brevard counties. So, because they got so many turtles up there that they didn't have enough space for everybody. So instead of trying to squeeze them all in together, which wouldn't be very fun for either the workers or the turtles, they kind of transferred them around a little bit. So we ended up with 12. So this is one of the 12. He's just chilling out here in his little tank with his little buddies. And so these are green sea turtles. They're actually one of the more common species that we get, and they're called the green turtles, even though they're not actually green because they're primarily herbivores. So they eat green stuff. So any sorts of plants, so primarily seagrass, algae, things like that. But they eat so much of that green stuff that their fat, their insides turn green. So it's kind of like you are what you eat. Just be glad it doesn't work that way for us, because we'd be all sorts of different colors. So these turtles all just kind of washed up or were found very weak, very lethargic, not moving around too much, but very skinny, typically lots of growth on their shell, things like algae and barnacles. So they now have little cuts and scrapes everywhere. They're just very weak. They're just debilitated. They just need help. So that's why they're here. And so when we get bunches like this all in at the same time, we give them, well, everybody gets a name, but these guys get a kind of themed name. When we did this last year, we named them all after herbs and spices. This time, we decided to name them after Disney ocean movies. So you met Flounder. We also have Stitch, and then Nani, and then Hey. And then, of course, we've got some in one of our other tanks. Like this is Ariel coming over to get some of her meds, because they always have to get all of their scrapes and cuts cleaned. And Ariel here, she still has a little bit of barnacles on her shell. That all those little tiny circles are, those are barnacles. And a little bit of algae and barnacles on their shell is normal. Because they live in the ocean, they have a flat surface, they're going to get some. But when they're healthy, they've got fish and shrimp that'll clean all of that off of their shell. When they're sick, they float. They don't have access to any of that. So that's when they get more algae and more barnacles, which just, of course, makes them heavier and a lot harder for them, which makes them weaker and more sick. So it's kind of a vicious cycle. So when they first come in, we have to scrape all of those off, clean them up, gives us a chance to kind of see how they're doing. But she's doing pretty good. She's looking really, really well. So we'll kind of check over all of our little spots, make sure that they stay nice and clean. During this process, we tend to use a lot of honey. Honey's kind of like natural Neosporin. So it's natural antibiotic, antiseptic, and it's safe. So if they do end up getting it in their mouth or in their eyes, it's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. And sea turtles live in water. So that means that anytime they're in the water, anything that's on them is going to wash off. So even if it washes off into the water, it's not going to harm them because it's honey. So these are some more. We've got little Moana. We've got little Nemo. We've got Squirt. We've got Dory. So just makes it really fun. And we just use a little non-toxic paint pen to write their names on their shell. So that way we know who they are. Because everybody else, we get pretty good with trying to figure out who they are. But when you have 12 come in all at the same time, they need name tags. But little Dory's kind of hanging out in her toy. Because in the wild, they're used to having rocks and ledges and reefs. So when they're here, we can't give them rocks. They've had a rough enough time as it is. So they get PVC pipe. So that they can hide under or sleep under or their shells up against it. But those are all of our little greens. And they are all adorable. They're all adorable, but those little guys especially so. This is little Grunts. He's kind of sleeping. He's kind of showing you how they use that PVC pipe. And so he's another little green. He's been here since the beginning of December. He came in with an intestinal parasite. And so they always have some parasites. They're wild animals after all. But when they get like an infestation, it just kind of knocks them down. So Grunts has been on antiparasitic meds for the past, just about 2 months. And he's doing very, very well. He's getting stronger. And he's finally eating on his own, which is a very, very good sign. We've been tube feeding him or giving him IV nutrition. So he's finally getting a little bit stronger, but he still tends to sleep a lot. They're kind of like people. When you get sick, you get very weak and tired and you just want to sleep all day. Same thing for these turtles. So that way he can kind of hang out underneath that. He can sleep when he wants to. And then when he needs to breathe, he'll just come up to the surface and take a breath. But when they are sleeping like that, they can hold their breath up to about 5 hours. So they can hold their breath a lot longer than we can. But he's a cute little guy. And he's not one of our 12 that we just got in, but we do have a crush. I know it's a Disney ocean theme named, but we tend to get lots of crushes and lots of squirts. We've also had quite a lot of Ninja Turtle names, although Michelangelo's and Donatello's over the years, because normally it's the people that find our turtles that get to name them. So we do end up with some very interesting turtle names. And so Crush has been here since the beginning of January. It's about a month and a half. He came in floating. So floating in a sea turtle is not normal because they eat at the bottom, they sleep at the bottom, they do everything at the bottom. So when they are stuck up at the top, they really are stuck. So he was sick. Turns out he was just very, very gassy. We're not completely sure why. They don't always tell us where it hurts. So we were able to get that gas gone by using meds. So we just want to keep him a couple of weeks off meds, make sure that gas really is gone and that floating is not going to come back. So we're just kind of waiting on him. But he is adorable. So yeah, lots and lots of greens. And they always keep it fun. We go through a lot of lettuce every day. And there's Ariel still getting checked on. When we have this many turtles, yesterday we started out with 40 turtles. Now we've got 52. So it makes it kind of fun. But most of our turtles come from right around here in the Keys. And so the Keys, well, a little bit more than 100 miles long. So there's lots of turtles, lots of iguanas as well. But those guys, they're just wild. They come and go. But typically people see these turtles that just don't look normal. Either that they're floating or they're kind of entangled. They can clearly see a boat strike or something wrong. So then they call us. So one of our rehab staff are always on call. They go pick that turtle up and then they bring them in here to us. Or if the boat is close enough, they can bring it right here into our docks. So they always like to keep us busy. So every year we typically get in about 100 turtles. But let's see if we can find Trinity. So Trinity, another green. Told you we have a lot of those. Trinity, though, she was bit by a shark. So she is missing her left rear flipper and a little chunk of her shell right back there. And so she's been here since the middle of November. So she's been here for a little while, and that's healing up very, very nicely. She still probably has a couple more months for it to finish healing. Like, you don't heal from a shark attack overnight. So she just needs a chance to heal. But even though she is missing that left rear flipper, she will be able to be released. She'll always look a little bit different. Think of a three-legged dog, but still be able to do everything normal. Because even now, while she's still healing, she's not having any problems. So she's doing very, very good. But she got the name Trinity because she only has 3 flippers. Told you, the names are fun. Just like Noel. Noel came in right before Christmas. So, Noel. We once had a turtle come in on Christmas Eve and his name was Grinch. But just helps keep it fun. Because yes, even though every turtle does get a string of numbers that's unique, it's hard to remember 50 strings of numbers, so we like to use names. But we do end up with multiples over the years. We've been here since 1986, so over the past 30 years, we've had lots of crushes and lots of squirts. Okay, so let's see. Big guys. So our big pool here, this is where all of our non-releasable turtles live. So far we've met lots of patients. So turtles that once they're completely healthy, they're going home. They're going back into the ocean because there's no reason for us to keep them. But we sometimes end up with turtles that, even though they may get completely healthy, they just can't survive anymore on their own in the wild, so they stay with us. And we're not going to keep them in one of those little tiny tanks forever, because that's not fun or fair to them. So they get to hang out in here to our larger pool. It's a little bit more natural. It's tidal. It has fish. So that way they can be a little bit more natural. So one of them, we've got this guy. This is Montel. So he's actually named after the talk show host because he came in with a lot of drama. So he's been hit by a boat, bit by a shark, entangled in fishing line, and he's had tumors. So he's missing half of his right front flipper, all of his left front flipper, his right eye, and his shell is dented on his left side. So he's had a rough life. So he's not very fast. In order to be released, they need 3 flippers like Trinity, with only 2.5 flippers in one eye. Montel doesn't meet that. So he gets to stay here. Here he does fine because he doesn't have to be fast. Doesn't have to worry about boats or sharks or even finding his own food. So he's a really, really cool turtle. But most of our non-releasable turtles have bubble butt. Something that these turtles get when they get hit by a boat. Not always. Not every boat strike turtle develops bubble butt. But if the force of the boat strike is enough, it'll cause enough damage that it'll cause either nerve damage and paralysis, or it causes air to get trapped underneath that shell, which then causes these turtles to float. And most of the time they do float butt up. The original bubble butt is in here, and he got the name bubble butt because his butt floats. And so because he was the first, it became bubble butt syndrome. So we're very lucky we didn't name him Bob or something like that. But cannot release a floating sea turtle because remember, floating isn't normal in the wild. So they get to stay here. But we still want to make it more comfortable for them while they're here. So we attach lead weight to the outside of their shell. So that's what those gray circles are on their butts. Those are weights. So like Chance here, he's got the one weight on his right side. So that way when he wants to, he can go down to the bottom and go to sleep. It's just that eventually those weights are going to fall off. So then they're back to floating. So even with the weights, they still cannot be released because once you release a turtle, they're not ever coming back, especially not for a checkup. But in here, they get to do fine. And eventually, if we just kept everybody, we'd run out of space. So some of these guys will eventually end up at zoos or aquariums because it's the only way for a zoo or an aquarium to get a sea turtle. So that's where some of these little bubble butts will go, like Chance or Corey. We've got Sam and Smalls and Coasty. So until they get their final permanent home, they get to hang out with us and we get to love on them. Okay, we've got some questions.
We've got so many questions, Teresa. In addition to our 7 live classes, and Miss Digby's class joined us while we got underway from Fairfax in Virginia. We also have 8 classes joining on YouTube, plus like an entire class just split amongst kids that are off on a snow day. So for the classes on YouTube, please do type in some questions. I'll take as many as I can. But let's get underway and start with Miss Rosenberger's class. If you guys want to kick us off, come on up.
Come on up here. And then come right into a little further.
You're good.
And now ask you a question.
How many species of turtles do you have?
Yeah.
Well, we do have 3 species. I know all I've really shown you are greens, but that's because the greens are the only ones that are actually coming up to say hi. We do have one Kemps Ridley. Her name is Bender. She's actually in this pool. She's one of our non-releasable turtles. And the Kemps Ridleys are also known as the ghost turtles because they're very light in color. But she likes to sleep down at the very bottom underneath the buoy. And she only comes up when she needs to breathe, which is not very often. But Bender, she is very cute. She's very pretty. That's a picture of her, but she's very, very stubborn. It's very hard to make a sea turtle do something that they don't want to do. And then we do have a few loggerheads. And within about 20 square feet here, we have 3, but they are all sitting on the bottom, sticking their heads up against the post because they're all very shy. Because that's what they do in the wild, is that when they want to go to sleep, they go stick their head up underneath a rock or a ledge because they think that if they hide their heads and that they can't see us, that we can't see them. So, which in this case actually works.
Just that was fantastic. Thanks, Teresa. A quick follow-up if you're doing it on YouTube. So you have 3 there at the hospital. How many types of turtles are there in the world?
There's 7 throughout the entire world. There's 5 that are found around Florida. The 2 that we don't see very often are the leatherbacks, which are the ones that are massive, like 2,000 pounds massive. And then the hawksbill, which those are the ones that are now critically endangered because they're the ones that have that very pretty tortoiseshell pattern on their shell. So anything that used to be made out of tortoise shell used to be made out of sea turtle shell. So we don't see them very often, even though their populations are coming back. They just need more time. But then the other two species that are not around Florida are the olive ridleys, which those are typically in the Pacific and the Southern Atlantic, and then the Australian flatbacks, which are only near Australia.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, let's go to Miss Bell's class in Arizona. If you guys want to come up, go for it.
Yeah, come on down. Ask questions. You can ask fast. Yeah, ask.
How do you know if it's a boy or a girl?
Yeah.
Well, that depends on their age. Because when they're younger, like these guys, we have no idea. They look identical from the outside. The only way to tell when they're little like this is to actually look inside and see what parts they have. Now, the only way to tell from the outside is to wait till they get to be adults, which is about 20, 25 years old. Then once they're that big, then if they're a boy, they're going to get a very long tail, up to about 13 inches in length. Whereas if they're a girl, tail's going to stay really, really short. It's not going to go past the end of their shell. So sometimes we do end up with turtles with the wrong names. So like this guy, this is April. April came in April 1st, 1991. He had tumors covering both of his eyes. And so because of that, he's blind. But he does fine here because nothing ever changes and we hand feed him his food. But after April had been here for a few years, we noticed April started growing a long tail. So April is not a girl. April is a boy. So luckily, they don't care what their names are. The names are really just for us.
Yep.
We also have a George who's a girl.
Beautiful name. All right, let's go to Milton, Miss Vanderslee's class. Come on up, guys.
Okay. So, let me know these parasites. Dating parasite experience for us. For those who don't know.
Yep.
How are turtles going extinct or endangered?
Yeah, so are turtles going extinct or are they endangered, Teresa?
Well, they're all protected under the Endangered Species Act. So that's why we have special permits and to take care of them. And that's actually why we're here. We've got sea turtles and the loggerheads. They are considered threatened, which means that their populations are doing better. Whereas the Kempsridleys, the hawksbills, the leatherbacks, those are all still considered critically endangered. So that's why we're trying as hard as we can to help as many as we can and try to get them out there, because the more we can get them healthy and back out into the wild, the more babies they can have.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to take a question from a bunch of YouTube groups. So both Miss Fletcher's class at Rio Elementary in Wisconsin and Miss Wisniewski's class in Oshawa, Ontario wanted to ask, can turtles get prosthetic fins or flippers?
They can, but if they do, they still need to stay in captivity. Because remember, sea turtles aren't ever going to come back for a checkup. And if you ever have anything like that, you always have to go back to the doctor occasionally because it has to be adjusted and fixed. Or if it breaks, like they're not forever. If it breaks, that means that it has to be fixed. So with turtles like Trinity, a prosthetic really isn't an option because she's fine with the other three. So we're not going to put something on her that's going to make it harder. Prosthetics are really only an option for turtles that struggle missing those flippers. Montel's been here for so long, he's kind of adapted, so he's fine. But there are turtles, especially at some aquariums, like there's one down at the Key West Aquarium who's missing a flipper, and she has a 3D printed prosthetic. It's something that's becoming a lot more available because of 3D printing. It's a lot more cost effective.
Yeah, fantastic. Great question, guys, too. All right, let's head to Miss Holden's group. Come on up, guys. By the way, and they're wearing pink because it's anti-bullying day, so good for you guys. That's fantastic.
No turtles here underwater.
Perfect.
Well, underwater they can hear, especially like the lower registers, like the lower frequencies. Not so well the higher frequencies. That's why they don't always hear the boats coming, especially if the boats are going fast. But they can't really hear from outside the water. So like I could be talking really, really loud, almost yelling above the tank, and they can't hear that, which is sometimes a good thing. But hearing is not their best sense. They're going to focus more on sight and then smell. And I saw Vacation Land swimming around. Let's see if he's going to come up to say hi, because he's one of our loggerheads. But he may or may not decide to come up to say hi.
You had food. It's the solution to everything. While he's coming up, and we'll say hi if he does, I'll head to Miss Deer's class. If you guys have a question, come on up.
I was wondering how many sea turtles you get a year.
Typically about 100 turtles every year. So they like to keep us on our toes. Which most of the time, we just get 1 or 2 a week. Now we've had it in the past where we've gotten 3 in one day, which those days are always fun. But it's not very often that we actually get like 12 turtles transferred to us, or like a number of turtles transferred to us all at one time. That typically only happens maybe once or twice a year. Sometimes it's because they're just debilitated, but we also tend to get them sometimes when it gets cold other places, because sea turtles, they don't like it when it gets cold. They get cold stunned. Their bodies just kind of shut down, just like us in hypothermia. And so if they get too many, they have to share them around.
Fantastic. Mr. Chris's class, Bennett, Mr. Chris's class wanted to ask, how long does a turtle usually stay at the hospital?
It depends on the turtle. All depends on what's wrong with them. Just like with people, takes you longer to get a broken arm rather than a cold. Same thing for these turtles. So, like Maisie here, she's been with us since July. So she still has a while to go. But when she came in, she had tumors all over her neck, all over her eyes, all over her flippers. To kind of give you an idea, that's what she looked like. So she was a mess. And those tumors, it's a virus that these turtles get caused by water pollution. And so the only way to kind of fix it is to do surgery and remove those tumors. And so Maisie, finally tumor-free. It's taken her multiple surgeries. So now she has to spend a few months, has to heal. We have to make sure that those tumors aren't going to come back, and then she can be released. So it typically averages out to about 9 months to a year for these turtles that have those tumors.
Yeah.
Some turtles only stay for a few weeks. Some turtles stay for more than a year.
Yeah.
Because none of my big loggerheads want to come up to say hi today, I'm going to show you my little loggerheads. We've got 2 little guys. We've got Lucy, who is trying to hide, and then Ethel. So these 2 are about 6-month-old loggerheads. So when they grow up, they'll get that really big loggerhead head. But at this point, they're still just 6 months old. So they're still just babies. And they actually came in, typically we get the babies when they don't make it to the ocean by themselves. Sometimes in their nest or kind of distracted by lights. These 2 were actually part of a study trying to figure out how many boys and girls there are, because with sea turtles, that's all dependent on temperature. So the warmer the nest, the more girls, cooler the nest, the more boys. In the past 7 years along the east coast of Florida, at least in the one section of the beach, they've seen almost 100% females hatching out. which is not always a good thing. So they kind of helped us out. So now it's our turn to help them out. Within the first kind of couple of years of their life, it's estimated only 1 out of 600 makes it. So we're going to keep these two till they're about 2 years old, about 20, 25 pounds. So that way they'll have a much better chance of survival. Because when they're first born, they're only 2 to 3 inches long. At 6 months old, they're just about the size of my hand. Within 2 years, they'll be a lot bigger. So bigger you are, less things want to eat you. So they'll have a much better chance.
Awesome. Thank you for showing us the video. That's awesome. All right, let's head to Miss Digby's class. You guys have a question?
Go ahead. How much funding do you, where or how do you get the funding for turtles?
Oh, could you repeat that?
How do you guys get the funding for all of this?
Yeah, how do you get the funding? The money question of high school.
Well, it's not always easy. It's not always cheap to take care of these turtles. Nothing else, they tend to eat a lot, about 1% to 3% of their body weight a day. So it does take a lot of money, but we are open to the public. So everybody that visits here, we the admissions, we do adoptions, memberships, donations, and then even our gift shop. So that way everything they spend here stays here. And that's what allows us to take care of all of our turtles.
One of the things we've been highlighting too this year is that we work with the Turtle Hospital. We always encourage classes to donate if they can. Not mandatory, but it's something you can do really easily off their site. For both the live classes and the YouTube groups, I'm going to be sharing a link where you can look into learn more about the Turtle Hospital, see what they do, and see how you can contribute. So we really appreciate if you guys get a chance to do that. But just a quick note. Miss Pearson's class, if you guys want to come up for a question, go for it.
How big does their shell get?
Yeah.
Well, that depends on the species. So these loggerheads, little Ethel here, at the moment, she's only 6 months old, so she's tiny. You were tiny too at 6 months old. But eventually, she'll get to be about 400 pounds. So she'll like about 3.5, 4 feet long. So very, very large. But where people, you hit adulthood and you stop growing, or at least you stop growing up. With sea turtles, they never stop growing. So the older the turtle, the larger they are. That's really the only way to guesstimate their age is based off of their size. So average lifespan, about 70 to 100 years. And so our biggest turtle, let's see if she is awake. Her name is Bowie. She's about 315 pounds. But she's probably close to 40 years old. And of course, she's not up at the top, but I do see her butt sitting down there at the bottom. But the greens will get to be about 500 pounds. But the largest of the turtles are the leatherbacks. They'll be about 2,000 pounds, anywhere up to like 9, 10 feet long. Which is why it's another good thing that we don't typically get leatherbacks.
Hard to keep. When a turtle weighs as much as all the kids in one of the smaller classes combined, that's a sign that you've got a large animal in your hands. Teresa, before we dive in with another round of questions with the live classes, just want to note we've got classes tuning in on YouTube from California, Connecticut, Nova Scotia, Ontario, Wisconsin, more. So we really appreciate you guys being here. A quick question from a lot of the kids in Mr. K's class especially, is how old do the turtles get?
Average lifespan's about 70 to 100 years. So like little Lucy and Ethel, tiny, so 6 months old. Coasty there, sitting on top of the pipes, is what, 45, almost 50 pounds. So probably 12, 15 years old. Bowie, she is sitting down there at the bottom. I can just barely make out her butt. She's that 315-pound turtle, so she's the one that's closer to 40 years old.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping she'll come up, but it's very hard to make a 300-pound turtle do something that they don't want to do.
No. Fantastic. All right, let's do another round of questions, guys. Miss Rosenberger's class, if you guys want to kick us off, come on up. Oh.
So
They all had to leave and go to lunch, but there are a few questions that they have shared with me, and one of them is how fast do they usually swim?
Well, they can do bursts of speed up to about 30 miles an hour. They can't maintain that speed, but they can do bursts of speed, especially to get away from predators, things like that.
30 miles an hour. So literally today, for whatever reason, it was on the news that Usain Bolt at peak speed was 27.8 miles an hour. So turtles can outdo Usain Bolt. There you go. Never would have thought coming. I'm going to head to our older class first, actually. I'm going to go to Miss Digby's class again. If you guys want to come up for a second question, go for it.
Oh, wait, we get a question. Oh, you coming out here? Oh,
Hey.
Hi. Do you chip and track the turtles once they're released in the wild?
Yeah.
I also want to know about.
Well, they do get tagged. So when they get released, everybody gets a microchip. It's called a little pit tag, just like microchipping your dogs. And then they get a flipper tag, a little metal tag attached to the backside of each front flipper. So that way, if they pop up anywhere else throughout the entire world, we know who they are. But those are only good if we see that turtle again. In order to track them, you have to do a satellite tag, which is a GPS tracker that you glue to the outside of their shell.
Yeah.
It's just that those are a lot more expensive and they don't last for nearly as long. So we can't do that for everybody. We just do a few of those every year.
Yeah. Perfect. Ms. Vanderslee's class, if you guys want to come back up and Milton, go for it. Oh, your audio isn't coming through, guys. You're unmuted, but for whatever reason, we can't hear what you're saying. Don't go on.
How do you find the turtles in the ocean?
Perfect.
Well, luckily, we don't have to go out and search for these turtles because that's a lot of ocean. And so there's already lots of boats and people out there on the water. So we rely on them because most people know kind of what's normal or what's not normal for a sea turtle. Because when you're out there on your boat, as soon as they see you, they're going to dive down and disappear. But if they can't do that, or if they try and they don't make it very far, that's how they know that something is wrong. So then that's when they call us.
Fantastic. All right, we're going to take 4 more questions, guys, before we wrap up. So Miss Bell's class back in Arizona, come on up again. Take your time. Don't hurry, guys.
Okay, answer your question. Yeah.
How many pools you have in there?
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
How many turtles you have in there?
Oh, how many turtles do you have there?
We currently have 52, and Bowie finally decided to come up.
Yay!
So that's Bowie, the biggest of the turtles that we have here. She's the one that's 315 pounds.
Yeah.
She finally decided to wake up.
Perfect.
But because every year we get in about 100 turtles, our average is between 40 to 55 at any one time.
Excellent. Easy, low-hanging fruit question. Let's go back to Miss Holden's class. Come on up, guys.
What's a turtle's life cycle?
Life cycle. Yeah, good question.
Well, when they're kind of born, they're on the beach because a mama turtle lays the eggs. Each nest has about 100 eggs. And that's one of the rare times that they're actually with other turtles, is when they're mating or when they're hatching. Other times they're solitary. So they start out their lives on the beach. And then it takes them about 50 to 60 days to hatch. So then they crawl to the ocean and then they swim offshore to the safety of the Gulf Stream and those big seagrass and seaweed mats out there. It's its own little world out there. So they'll spend a few years out there, chance for them to hide and get big. And then they'll kind of, depending on what type of turtle they are, they may move back near shore, they may stay offshore, but pretty much until they're adults, their main goal is just to eat and grow big. And then once they're big enough, it's time for them to come back and have babies. And they always return to the same beach that they were hatched from to lay their own eggs. So it's kind of a big circle.
And so
They may
Teresa,
disappear, they may travel for thousands of miles, but they always end up back where they came from.
which is super cool. There's one thing I just want to highlight with regards to that is that it's one of the most epic things in nature is turtles rushing from their hatching nest to the ocean and all the predators that try and eat them. How many turtles actually survive to adulthood that are born?
Well, I told you that with like Lucy and Ethel, within the first 1 to 2 years of their life, only 1 out of 600 make it. Takes them about 20, 25 years to hit adulthood. And that's a long, long time to survive. So then it's going to take probably about 1 out of 1,000 is actually going to make it. And so when they're little, like Lucy, she's hiding underneath the pipe there. But that's what they do in the wild is they hide. Because they know that they can't protect themselves. Like they're not going to go after a shark. So hiding works out too.
For a lot of creatures. I want to take one last question from our YouTube class in Nova Scotia from Miss Grant Townsend's class, and that is for kids in Nova Scotia or kids in Connecticut or kids in any of these places that are far away from the turtle hospital, what can they do to help turtles?
Well, one way is just to be aware. Know that everything ends up in the ocean. Doesn't matter where you are, everything ends up in the ocean. There's much more ocean on this planet than there is land. So just be aware of that. Make sure you're not littering. Make sure you're recycling as much as you can, because the less stuff that ends up in the ocean, is the less stuff for these turtles to eat or get entangled in. And even things like balloons. Like you let a balloon go into the air, it has to come down eventually. A lot of times it does that over the ocean, and those balloons and even plastic bags end up looking like jellyfish. So looks like food. These turtles can't tell the difference, so they eat it, and then it makes them sick. And it's just being aware of things like that, that just because you may throw it away or maybe out of sight, it doesn't just disappear. It always ends up somewhere. And whether that is in the ocean or in the mouth or belly of an animal. And that's the same thing with a lot of like the single-use plastics. Okay, you get one use out of it, maybe 5 minutes, then where does it go? It goes and sits in a landfill for the next 500 years.
I'm really glad we never get that question, so I really appreciate you guys typing that in. I know we could take questions all day. I know we have a slew more on YouTube, but we're out of time. So what we're going to do at the end of every session is I'm going to demute the microphones of every class joining us live. So boys and girls, if you guys could get ready to join me in saying a huge thank you to Teresa for taking us around the Turtle Hospital Day. Miss Holden, Miss Bell, Miss Digby, Miss Fancy, you guys are all demuted. Take it away. Thank you so much. Thank you guys. We really appreciate you all tuning in today. Thank you so much for the enthusiasm and some great questions. Teresa, thank you so much for joining us once again. It's always a pleasure. All right. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.